Indiana Jones, Indiana. It's a podcast about Indiana Jones. Every movie, 1 minute at a time. Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones Minute.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones Minute, the podcast where we get to the heart of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom 1 minute at a time. I'm Tom Taylor.
I'm Pete Mummert.
I'm Jerry Porter.
And I'm Scott Rosann.
Welcome,
and I had
Scott.
bugs for lunch. Hello.
Oh, this is embarrassing. We're serving bugs today.
Wow. No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Let's be culturally sensitive. That's fine.
Oh, no, I mean, it's fine that we're serving bugs, but I mean, if you just had it for lunch, I mean, I just feel bad. We could have varied it up a little bit.
You're insulting me, and you're embarrassing yourself. Eat.
That's usually how it works.
Eat.
Eat.
Listen, we're here. We're glad to welcome Scott back for minute 24 of Temple of Doom. You were our buddy in Cairo for Raiders, and that was awesome.
It was fun.
We learned a lot about hay and straw.
Yeah, and the pots
that's
and pans
right.
economy.
That's right. That's right.
And how you explained to me why my favorite moment in Raiders was my favorite moment, or one of my favorite moments. That whole just cutting away from Sallah after he says his line. That's all it took.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It
was awesome.
Editing makes all the favorites.
Yeah.
Let's drop that in later.
Eat.
Eat. Well, thanks, guys. It's good to be back.
Oh yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
Minute 24 of Temple of Doom begins with the Shaman saying that Pankot Palace now has the power of the Dark Light, and it ends with him laughing that Shiva has brought Indy here.
So this is kind of the first introduction we get to the palace and the fact that there's a new Maharaja. And so I thought maybe a little bit of history here might kind of go a long way to explaining some of the events that are happening now and that are going to happen very shortly here in the movie. So like to start off, from 1757 to 1858, India was ruled by a private corporation called the British East India Company. And they basically showed up and they had like a super powerful navy and said, "Hey guys, nice country, we're in charge now."
That sounds familiar.
It's crazy. Like it's just a private, like it's like if Panera Bread showed up in Vermont and said, "Hey." In true capitalist fashion, the British East India Company hired local people in India to serve as their military force. Unfortunately, they didn't always treat the soldiers terribly well, so local mercenaries revolted in 1857, and they caused so much havoc that the British government decided they'd just go ahead and take over rule directly in India, which they did in 1858, and this sort of brought about the height of British colonial power. They did this in about 2/3 of India, and the other third of the country was basically still controlled by these little princedoms that were nominally sovereign, but for the most part were still just puppets of the British Empire. In the little versions of these princedoms, they were ruled by a guy called a Raja, and in the bigger ones, usually like they'd be a few towns or villages and a big palace, they were ruled by a Maharaja. And it's in one of these larger ones, Pankot, with its Maharaja, that Indy finds himself now.
Okay. So I have a great question, actually, that I never even considered before. Is Pankot Palace a real place?
I can answer that. It's not.
Oh, okay. Please do.
I just found this out today. It apparently they had a lot of trouble. This production had a lot of trouble with the Indian government over content in the script.
Right.
And they were disallowed from filming in India, or they were semi-allowed to film in India, but they had to write all kinds of unusual material in describing how the Thuggee had taken over a province adjacent to India, India-like, and they didn't want to do that. That clearly was going to impact the movie's appeal with the little kids, I think. who are sticklers for
Right.
these things. Right.
Trade
So,
federations, etc.
exactly. So they, I guess they simply pulled all the agreements they had to shoot there because they didn't want all the onerous script approval for the Indian government, and but they did agree to change the names of some of the locations. So Pankot, and I should have written it down what it really is. It's a little province in the north of India, and it has a longer name than Pankot, and you could probably get the word Pankot out of it if you took the letters apart and moved them all around on your table, and then there'd be some letters left over. And with that, you could write a good script. Yeah.
I remember getting the British East India Company that
Action
question
figures?
wrong.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, I remember
Local
getting
governor
that
was
wrong
one of my
in
favorites.
6th or 7th grade.
Oh yeah, that was solid like Western Civ stuff.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah.
And they were huge, but it was confusing because you're like, well, so it's not England. It's
Right.
something else.
Yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
company based
Yeah.
in England.
Yeah.
So you wrote England, or you wrote something else like Railroad Salvage or something? Like,
No, I wrote something. I wrote.
You wrote AC/DC rules.
Listen, I wrote Snaggletooth.
well, I'm sorry you got it wrong.
Yeah.
It seems like your life has worked out pretty well, nevertheless.
Medium. I'm gonna see where Shiva. It brought me down here. I'm gonna see where Shiva takes me, and
There you go.
yeah,
That's a good attitude.
That is a
Shiva
great
brought
attitude.
me to L.A., and that's what's going on right now.
Wow.
I thought it was interesting. I found out there are still Maharajas in India, like that are descendants, like in the same lineage of the original Maharajas. But most of them have apparently converted their palaces into luxury hotels.
Oh,
So if
wow.
you want to stay in Pankot Palace, just look on TripAdvisor.
Well, you kind of mentioned this. I mean, what's interesting about minute 24, Pete, you kind of touched on this, is that this feels like where the movie, The Temple of Doom, actually begins.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense because all the Lao Che stuff was supposed to be in Raiders anyway, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So I feel like for some reason, as I was watching minute 24, I was like, oh, the story of the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Right.
Because even that raft ride and the driving past the shaman on the raft and waving at him was in the original Raiders script.
Right?
So that this is literally the first scene we get that's brand new material.
Wow. Interesting. I didn't know that. That's
And it's a good scene. I keep getting re-surprised at what a good scene it is, because I think I said last time that like I would always think of this scene as like a good example of how Willie sort of clashes with the movie. That like there's this kind of cool, eerie, weighty conversation going on, and then it like keeps getting interrupted by this blonde American dame just kind of interjecting stuff.
Right.
But I'm getting a lot less of that watching it now. I'm kind of like, oh, no, this is working. Like even most of her interjections are, they're valid and they kind of make sense and stuff, and they're not as jarring.
It's jarring.
Thank you.
it's it's easily the most adult and sane conversation the three principal characters have with each other.
Yeah,
They're all
that's
speaking
true.
in
Yeah.
full sentences. There's no jokes.
Yeah.
It's not, there's a little bit of,
Right.
there's a little, it's not quite levity around the, her hideous faux pas of turning her nose up
Right.
at the food and so forth. If I'm allowed to reference past minutes, but
No,
yeah,
stop it. I mean, yes.
but it's easily the last place in this movie. And I was going to say that the whole scene, to me, feels like this is a turning point for the entire series. If I can run the risk of aggrandizing this moment that I've selected here, is that like this moment feels to me like 1981 Raiders of the Lost Ark. In terms of the way Indy behaves, in terms of the way it's shot, in terms of the way everyone's acting, and in terms of the way the dialogue is written, it all feels old school. Very much compared to where the thing is going to go. Only 1-2 scenes later, like literally, we're about to walk through a door, and we, as Indiana Jones fans, will never walk back. It is the door of calm and the door of sensible movie making and toned down and not overly emphasized, overly cartoony, overly acted kind of stuff. It's really subtle, and the music is great, and the atmosphere is great, and the shooting is great. I love it. I love these minutes.
And I think a lot of that feeling is Harrison Ford in this scene. Like, he's doing a great job. He's like, he's I don't know what to say about it. He's just like, there's a lot of natural little things going on with him in these few minutes. Like the way he kind of like, he's like, but Delhi's not on the way to, or Pankot Palace is not on the way to Delhi. And he kind of like continues like with his, what do you, kind of like almost mumbling to himself, like as the shaman is explaining and stuff. He's like, I somebody help me. I don't know what's going on here. And there's a lot of, and like dealing with Shorty and stuff behind him. Like Shorty keeps interrupting. He's like, just hang, Shorty, just a minute. And like this, it's very natural. I love
that
and
little
cool.
gesture too. That little thing when he shushes him and he does it very gently. It's so gentle. It's really like Indy is very, very sort of wired into the politeness of this situation and the delicacy of the situation, and he even extends that to Short Round and maybe to a lesser degree to Willie. He's being very gracious to everybody around, even the people he showed up with who he didn't necessarily want to travel with. So I think it's great.
We didn't really say this in the last minute when they're when he's chewing her out for not chewing the food, and he's like like he's up until that point he's been nothing but like, shut up, you dizzy dame. Like he's been like overly obnoxious to her. And here he's like, very subdued. He's like reading the room. He's like, look, please, we're in these people's homes. They're all starving. Can you please just work with it?
Listen, to be honest, in these 2 minutes, 24 and 25, she has one line. We crashed.
Right.
Well, that's next minute, but hang on.
That's what I said, in minutes 24 and 25. I'm saying there actually is zero Willie in this minute, is my point.
Right, but there's in this minute there isn't. That's true.
Yeah.
She doesn't just start screaming, just,
Yes, she did. What what you
her.
said, Tom, is that I actually think the minute works very specifically because of the shaman and how incredible he is.
Oh, he's huge,
Yeah. And Indy, too. I mean, Indy, I agree, is acting superbly here.
Well, I think Shorty is too. Like he's just sitting back there, kind of distractedly eating, and he's like licking his fingers. And it's funny because last week Chris LaSalle was talking about how he can't see Short Round without thinking of Data from Goonies, and like I kind of see that too. But in this scene, like I kind of can't see him without thinking of Chunk because he's just like going at that food.
Wow. And he's wearing Indy's hat, right?
Yeah.
Which I thought was like a perfect, sort of, it's indicative of that whole early 80s oversized thing.
It looks like
Diane Keaton.
Pretty in Pink.
Yeah, literally. Like if you saw Short Round wearing that hat, you wouldn't be like, oh, he's wearing an adult hat.
Right.
Like Talking Heads.
He's
giant
like
jacket.
Giant shoulder pads.
It's like a hip kid over there. Look at that. He's about to break into the wave and pop and lock.
Yeah, he's got his high tops on.
Yeah. Give my regards to Anthony Michael Hall.
Lots of zippered pockets to keep his foot pedal blocks, his foot extension blocks in.
Right. It's collapsible foot blocks.
Well, did you guys, any of you guys pick up on its second 5 in this minute 24? The howling wind noise and also the dry, dusty wind floating by outside.
Oh, yeah.
And in our Raiders podcast, we talked a lot about Yahweh popping in and out of scenes as the wind, like the flickering candle in Marion's bar and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And here we have a very mystical minute. And I'm wondering, so is that howling wind, is that Shiva?
I had that exact same note written down.
Oh, wow.
It said, mine said amazing choral voices. There's this wind noise, and then there are these voices. and I wrote like the wind in the arc scenes. So it's like the same kind of thing where they say that this is where you're going to get the mystical download. These sort of expository scenes. Where Indy really knows what he's talking about too.
And also there's a deity present.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm leaning towards yes.
So we need a Team Shiva T-shirt.
Let's start a holy war between Team Shiva and Team Yahweh.
Team Shiva. Wow.
Well, and the reason I feel that way is obviously the wind helps, but the shaman is so good here.
Yeah.
He's so good. I believe him there.
I still can't get over the fact that he doesn't speak a word of English.
That blows my mind.
Oh, so you guys have talked about that already, right? The long pauses in his performance, although he doesn't break eye contact. I don't know if he's looking at Spielberg or if he's looking at Harrison Ford, and Spielberg is just off to the side.
Yeah,
but
line.
But he's just total concentration, and then those long pauses. Where Spielberg is clear, but he's not. The amazing thing is that he's not ADR looped or Foleyed. It is his voice. So what they had to do was remove Spielberg. It sounds to me, and this is really rare in these movies, that all of them in this room in these 2 minutes that's the audio they captured on set, or it's the greatest ADR session in the history of cinema. I don't know which, but it's great, and he is just acting away. He's doing such a good job. This I guess you probably hit his name already, Dr. Nanayakara. Or as I call him, Dr. Beads.
Oh, wow.
That's what he prefers. That's his DJ name.
I love
Dr.
yeah,
Beads.
that's his. And those Japa Mala beads? I'm just asking.
No one's going to tell you they're not. How about that?
Well, if there's anybody on the Listeners Crusade, I actually did look up those beads, like the wooden beads that he's wearing, and apparently they're Hindu prayer beads, maybe called Japa Mala beads.
Huh.
So if somebody knows more about that, I'd be curious. But I have another question here, Pete. Maybe you know the answer to this. Why do you think? I mean, he talks about the dark light, but he says, the shaman specifically says that it's coming from the palace. Like the palace is the root of evil and the dark light. The very specifically the palace.
Because see, I think he's trying to differentiate the evil that's coming from the palace from the good that's all around that's coming from Shiva.
What does he say about the good though here? Does he say something about? He likes it.
He says
it's okay.
He says Shiva brought you here, and he.
Does he say that in this minute?
Yeah, he does at the very end. I think he says, "This is why Shiva brought you," and he just laughs and laughs. Yeah.
Yeah. And Andy points at him too.
Yeah.
Which I love. He points at him and laughs.
Yeah.
You got shivved.
Well, which is funny because you wonder, you're like, why is he? Is he laughing because, he's thrilled that his prayer has been answered? Or is he laughing?
Yeah, maybe.
Does he think it's hysterical that the onus of responsibility to save the village has fallen to Indy?
And Indy doesn't know it. I think it's this idea of like you don't have any idea what role you play in this, but but I do, and that's hilarious. Yeah.
Or does he think
it's great,
like
very joyful. Yeah.
Shiva's like a practical joker?
Well, it is actually kind of fitting because there's like a Hindu kind of holy trinity, and you've got Brahma, who's the creator, and Vishnu, who maintains, and Shiva's the destroyer. And I mean, if there's one thing Indy is known for, it's destroying things.
That's right.
I think he's a good choice.
Absolutely.
They'll understand each other completely.
Team Shiva all the way. Yeah.
Well, I wondered if there was a historical significance or symbolism to having the palace itself be the root of the evil.
Well, it almost sounds like, the way he's talking, it sounds more like he's saying, since this new Maharaja showed up, now there's evil coming from the palace. Like, I didn't get the sense that the palace was like a haunted house or like an evil place that whenever, it's reactivated or something, it's evil. Like, it kind of seems like he's putting the blame on the new Maharaja.
See, I thought the opposite, because he talks about the power of the black light.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
maybe he's talking about those cool like rock posters, but I think it's
They took the fish poster.
Right. Put the Iron Maiden
Bring
one
back
next
to
to
us.
the. Yeah.
Hey, Tom,
Yeah.
do you have a dark light in your life?
I used to. It looked awesome. I would turn it on, and yeah, I would.
I was wondering that because he talks about it. I'm like, does any, like, Pete, what's your dark light?
Get off him.
It's got very real very quickly.
Well, I just, when I heard him talk about that, because we have all these, evil, the force and the light side and the dark side, and you have a dark
Yeah.
light, and, it's very kind of Lucas, sort of
Yeah.
Spielberg, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it made me think, I was like, hey, I got to talk to these guys tomorrow. I wonder what Pete's dark light is.
Oh, maybe he's just talking about Big's Darklighter.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was about to say, is this our time to sort of nominate this for further evidence of the
I love
Han
that,
Solo
yeah.
Carbonite dream is
It is
Big's
now.
Darklighter.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
Speaking
That's
of awesome names, we have a very controversial moment here. A lot of people wonder whether Short Round is saying his name.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
Shorty jabs Indy in the shoulder, and he says, "See, bad news. You listen to Suwamu, you live longer."
Oh, no, I don't.
I listened to
I think
that-
he says short round. I think it's just he.
Well, wait, what's
Mushes
Suwamu?
his
No,
words
I
together.
listened to that over and over again because I remember that, and I remember that controversial reading about the controversy, and I listened to it over and over. And what did you? I came up with Sawamu.
Yeah, I got Suwamu.
Well,
is that
see,
is that
we're on the
something?
same-
Or is
Yeah,
that
it's
just
close. Yeah, no, I think they're on the same track.
is that just him completely messing up Short Round, or does that actually mean something?
I think it's the former. I don't buy it. I think he says short round, but he also didn't. His English wasn't terribly good either, and he had to learn
Right.
his
Yeah.
lines in little chunks. So it's like
Yeah.
I think he just says short round. Like very.
Oh my
fast and
God, that
mushes
is
it
not
together.
him. That is not him messing up Short Round.
I don't know.
I think he says Carrie.
I think
This
he
was
says,
his
"What's
first. I mean, in defense of Scott, even though I think he's completely wrong, this was his. This was.
well, then
his
by all
first-
means defend me.
Yeah, but this was one of the first scenes they filmed in the movie with Short Round in it. So this was where his English was at its lowest proficiency. So that's
Wait. He says Sawamu.
And not with you.
It's not Short Round.
But a lot of
I
the
mean,
people that think he says that also think he says you leave Lanka, like you leave Sri Lanka.
Oh,
make sense.
No, come on.
Yeah,
Hang on.
Yeah.
He wants to know if Indy has any breath in him.
Okay, think of it this way. Gloria Katz and Willard Hike are not screenwriters enough to not to say that they're not, marvelous talents in and of themselves. Howard the Duck, everyone loves it. But they're not screenwriter enough to write in that Short Round has a special name and teach it to the actor and tell him to deliver the line that way. The line by way of some small joke is, you listen to Short Round, you live longer.
Right.
It's, that's all it is. That's all it was on the page. And it just comes out of his mouth as mush. And
Yeah.
to their credit, they didn't go into a studio and say, no, we got to fix that. That's got to be perfect. And so it just comes out really naturally.
I'm thinking that Sawamu just might be. It's not Short Round. It's not Indy. It's just some other guy. and I'm fine with that. I'm not upset. Like, I'd be like, oh, remember from back in Shanghai, like when Indy and Short Round met? If you listen to Sawamu, you live longer.
Yeah, that guy was brilliant. He had the best advice.
Exactly. And it's just kind of one of those things. Like, maybe that's a further adventure of Indiana Jones and the the snake of Sawamu or whatever it is.
The purloined biscuit.
I'm all for yes and, but you guys are giving me some serious sawamu with this. I'm not. I don't buy it. I just can't go with you.
No Team Sawamu shirt for you.
No, exactly. Not for me.
Well, one thing which is fascinating, especially if we think about Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we know of Indy's avarice, when listening to the end of this story and you think, okay, there's, we got another, whatever, hour and a half in this movie, I did wonder what is going to motivate Indy to do this. If he's going to go to Pancop Palace, and we know Indiana Jones, our hero, you're like, but there's nothing here to really motivate him. There's no money. There's no museum piece.
Right.
That they can put away at Marshall College on the fourth floor.
Well, right now he's
Not
just
at
trying
this
to get to
point.
Delhi.
Right.
Right. But I'm just saying, and I'm getting a pinch ahead here too.
Yeah.
The previous, yeah. Like as he
It's
goes,
bothering
like
me.
he may go on this journey here. They're saying that he's destined, to do this, to go to Pancop Palace, and he basically has to, and that's going to be coming up. But you wonder what we know about Indiana Jones. You're like, well, that doesn't motivate him. I mean, Shiva?
Although,
Well,
like at this point, they tell him that they've lost the sacred stone, the Shiva Linga. Mm-hmm. And a Shiva Linga is actually a real thing. Like it's a pretty common. It's a little kind of stone column that represents the god Shiva. And they can be made out of they can be made out of precious stones. They can be made out of precious metal. So he might have just heard that and been like, huh, they lost something. It might be valuable.
I'm a raider of lost things.
well, he doesn't
Pete,
get it in
that's all
this
I-
minute.
But that's all I needed. That's all I needed. That was all I needed. There's, a lost stone, and it's probably worth money, and Indy could put that in a museum.
Right.
Okay.
He gets the first motivation. He talks. They tell him the story, and I'm going to jump ahead to a minute I have no business talking about. But they tell him the story, and it culminates. And this is literally like I said before. This is the last. Say goodbye to old Raiders style Indiana Jones, and say hello to new Indiana Jones franchise behavior.
Yeah.
They tell him the story, and it culminates with children. They took all the children, and
Right.
that's what. And you can see it in his eyes, and the performance is great. And that Spielberg
Yeah.
does the dolly up into the face, and and you can tell that that's got him hooked. But he may be sitting the fence, and then it goes farther from there in a couple of scenes that are really sort of super clunky, and the two scenes up against each other. So he gets one motivation, which would have been plenty enough to start this movie just off and running. And then they give him a second one, and it's as if they had kind of said, well, there has to be a MacGuffin, and lost children isn't enough.
Right.
And B, we need to have this sort of like rogue fortune hunter kind of bit of his personality, where it's, because he's not going to be hard bitten enough if he's super convinced coming out of this very sincere scene, and these minutes certainly encompass that. The whole movie is going to feel a little soft and mushy, so we need to give him that hard edge, like I'm in it for the money kind of, motivation. So they give him two motivations, one scene right after another. It's a little weird. I don't know if it
And
works.
I'll jump a little bit ahead too. One motivation seems a lot more sincere than the other one.
Right.
I buy it more as the way it's presented as a character and stuff.
Well, you can't. I mean, you can't put children in a museum.
When they're
Who
dead,
says?
you can. It's mummified.
If they're mummies.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, jinx. No, I know. I know what you're saying. It's just that's not the Indy that we know, But I guess he's this is a different set of circumstances. He's been interrupted on his journey, I guess.
Yeah.
He's very out of sorts here.
Yeah, I think he's just going to go to Delhi.
He's going to take their elephants where he wants them to.
Yeah, exactly. Like children. What am I going to sell that? Marcus doesn't need children. Where are we going to put him on the fourth floor?
I'd have taken solace if that was, if they were worth money.
Yeah, exactly. Belloc can't steal them. You think he'd
Well,
like
do we
it
have
for that
anything else
reason,
for this minute? Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say you think he'd want he'd want something that Belloc couldn't very easily steal or wouldn't want to be bothered stealing. It's like, oh, kids, I never thought of that. Belloc must hate kids.
One last thing I have. One of my favorite names you came up with for episodes last season, Tom. You had one called the Yonic Navigator.
Yeah.
And Shiva
Thanks,
Linga
Christy.
were generally when they're in a temple, like when they're presented in a temple or whatever, they were usually shown alongside a yoni or a symbol of the goddess Shakti, which is a name that will keep popping up. But we've got sort of a little weird connection here.
Not to be a bummer, but isn't Shakti a Jedi Knight in the prequels? Isn't there a Jedi Knight named Shakti?
It was a big band with John McLaughlin in it. Wasn't it?
I don't know. I believe
Pete?
you. Nerds.
You're right.
Wasn't it? Didn't it? I mean, I thought it was John McLaughlin. I could be wrong.
I think
like
I
a
think
bunch
you're right,
of
actually. Yeah.
70s, 80s fusion shredders.
Oh, boy.
And that's where it went.
Yes.
And that's the story of minute 24.
I still am just going to say, I do think it's weird, and no one's fully explained to me why Short Round says bad news is coming.
I think he's creeped out. He's in this place where like all the old ladies are grabbing at him and stuff, and everyone's depressed and sad and they're starving, and he's just creeped out, and he's like, this isn't going to go well. Like they're going to, the shaman was waiting for them and stuff, and he's leading them to the village. He's like, they want something, and then I don't want to hear what's going to happen next.
Right.
That's my take on it.
Okay.
I think this is totally his
you're
role
welcome.
with Indy is like, I'm always here to tell him to play it safe. And he never listens to me. Yeah.
Or to keep him on the straight and narrow or something, if he can. Well, listen, I think we've nailed 24. Scott, what have you been up to? Where can people find you? We never even said that for anyone who didn't hear your Raiders minutes, you are an editor, and you're awesome at it.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
Can people find you online to sample your works?
They can. You can find, if you're truly interested in sampling television works, you can catch me at scottrosann.com. The last name is Rosann. Or at Late and Soon on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. You can frequently find me, sort of lurking around the Indiana Jones Listener Minute page. So that's where you can find me. And on
all
your
good
TVs
places.
Everywhere. I'm the ghost in the machine.
And if you didn't write
us.
any of that stuff down, we'll put it all. If you come to our website, indianajonesminute.com, and click on the guest tab, it'll all be right there.
Yeah.
Such good hosts.
Speaking of
Click
Pete,
on Scott Rosann. Yes.
speaking of, where are other places where people can find us online?
Well, I think Scott just mentioned my favorite. Come to Facebook and join the group Indiana Jones Minute and the Listener's Crusade, and you can find Scott and Jerry and Tom and all kinds of other great people.
It's a party.
Yep.
It's actually a fun
A
place.
black light party.
Talking about politics. Oh,
Please, I was going to say, please share your dark light.
Yeah. It'll make your fingernails look yellow and your teeth. It's crazy.
Don't hide that dark light under a bushel.
Right. You know what stinks? I have Heart Light by what's his name?
that's almost where I went. By Neil Diamond.
Just
That's
turn it
almost
off.
where I went with that.
Yeah.
Cut
Sorry,
the
everybody.
minute off. Cut the minute off.
Yep.
Well, no, listen, you can hear our closing music is coming up. That'll knock it out of your head. Everything's fine. Thank you all for joining us for 24. Please come back tomorrow for minute 25 of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom here on the Indiana Jones Minute. Ooh, ooh.
Come. Sit down.
You got shivved.